Global terrorism is resurging. Are the United States prepared to face it? With terrorist attacks on the rise and entire countries at the mercy of radical groups, are we on the brink of a new wave of violence? Watch now and find out why the world is more dangerous than ever.
It's a really scary way to kick off the new year, seeing one terror incident, one possible terror incident within the hours of each other. Do you think that we can expect more terror incidents or copycats to be inspired by these types of attacks?
Look, my main concern right now is, again, that I think we could be seeing a return or a resurgence of Sunni jihadism. It was something that had trailed off. I think we were all under the impression, okay, God, we took care of that. Good, we're done with ISIS. They don't have a caliphate, as they call it. They don't control large chunks of territory. Bin Laden and Zawahiri were killed. Al-Qaeda, that broader war that we were fighting in the Middle East, we had extricated ourselves finally. I think it was premature. We are now looking at essentially two countries that are controlled by Sunni jihadi terrorists, the Taliban and now Syria. And, there are a few other territories out there, including a country like Sudan, for example. That's another country that I'm watching very carefully and could succumb to this kind of radical ideology, radical leadership. So when you start to see that kind of infrastructure out there at the state level, not to mention those that have been funding these sorts of movements, wealthy deep pocket donors from the Persian Gulf, and you've got Pakistan that's been promoting this kind of radicalization around the Middle East, around the Muslim world. You've got countries like Indonesia and Malaysia that are susceptible to this radical ideology as well. We're just not out of the woods yet. And as long as that infrastructure is there, as long as there are governments that are susceptible, populations that are susceptible, will be susceptible here, because we don't close our borders. We allow people to live here from other countries. We're a melting pot, and it will include people that have been exposed to this ideology overseas or at home. So I'd say there's a decent chance that we'll see more of this. Now, the big question is whether we're at the beginning of a big wave, or whether these were one-off type of attacks. And I think, again, the most important question is whether our intelligence services have been tracking this all along. And there was a pivot at one point where I think our intelligence really began to focus on Chinese nationals that were trying to steal intellectual property or to set up cells here in the United States. So we have to kind of juggle a bunch of different threats that are going on right now. You've got the Chinese, you've got Russian operatives. We've actually jettisoned some Russian agents that were based here just a few years ago. And now on top of that, we've got the Sunni jihadi problem as well. So we're going to have to walk and chew gum. And it's going to be interesting to see here what kind of threat there is and how on top of it the FBI in particular has been.
And a frightening reality has been exposed. Sunni terrorism is resurging, and the world may not be ready to face it. Discover everything that's behind this, and look at what today's interviewee said. Terrorism on the horizon. Are the United States prepared to prevent new attacks? Discover now.
Yeah.
I know you said you can basically sub out the names of ISIS and Hamas and other groups. They have very similar ideologies, but we haven't really heard ISIS in a while, as you said, and now you're curious, have intelligence agencies been tracking this? What is your indication? I know it is early yet, it's within 24 hours of this attack, but is there a good indication that they have been following this? What does that look like?
Well, we know that, for example, heading into the New Year's Eve celebrations in New York, there was a pretty significant deployment of security personnel and intelligence. That's kind of par for the course in New York. They've got a significant security infrastructure, and they have for as long as I can recall. This is the center of commerce in the United States, and I think our largest city. So we saw deployments there. I don't know if, we saw significant deployments in other cities. The indication that I saw is that, the car that was used in that attack in New Orleans, that there was lax security, that perhaps even some of the more basic review of security might have prevented that car from being able to reach these these people and could have averted a disaster. We just don't know how mobilized the FBI has been, whether the system was blinking red. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, early after 9/11, where the FBI, Homeland Security, would come out and issue statements to the American public, letting people know that they need to be vigilant, letting people know that the threat of a terrorist attack was something that was possible, and that folks needed to have their eyes open. If you see something, say something. I haven't seen much of that, if any at all, from the intelligence community here in the United States. So my sense is that, and it's always the case, that, our attention has shifted. We've been looking at other threats. My guess is that you have right now a bureau that is mobilizing as we speak, looking to ramp up efforts to make sure that this is not the beginning of a trend, and to do more to stop attacks. I mean, by the way, I should note, though, that even as these two attacks, or at least one appears to be clearly motivated by ISIS, the other one is, I guess, still being investigated in Las Vegas. But there was also, it appeared this was a successful thwarting on behalf of authorities in Florida. They stopped a man who was trying to carry out an attack against AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby organization. They were able to stop that, and that was, I think, good use of intelligence, successful thwarting of a terror attack. So we see some good news there, some less good news with some of these other incidents that took place over New Year's. I think a lot of questions right now still remain. In fact, I would say more questions than answers, because we're not getting a lot of information from authorities, not at the local level, not at the state level, certainly not at the federal level. I think the message that we're getting is that they're still trying to connect the dots, put the pieces together to come back with a story. Everyone's trying to be really careful to, not jump to conclusions about all of this. But what that means is that we're just getting a very slow trickle of information. And meanwhile, there could be other attacks looming, or perhaps, we'll dodge a bullet. But again, a lot out there we still don't know.
A very alarming concern is the lack of preparedness of intelligence agencies for a new terrorist attack. The good news is that an attack in Florida was prevented thanks to intelligence. But the bad news is that there are still many unanswered questions. Besides the silence of the authorities, this only increases the uncertainties. Are we on the brink of a new wave of attacks? As intelligence agencies try to connect the dots, the danger may be closer than we think. And the question that won't be silenced, what will Trump do in light of this new reality? Discover in this next interview.
But what we do know is that Donald Trump will be in office in less than 3 weeks. And as you said at the beginning of this conversation, Trump faces a new challenging landscape once he gets back into the White House. So what do you think the response is going to be from the incoming Trump administration about all of these concerns that you have?
Well, look, I mean, you're going to have at some point soon a new FBI director. You're going to have a new secretary for Homeland Security. You're going to have, new CIA leadership, new Department of Justice, right? I mean, you're going to, Attorney General. You're going to have lots of new people coming in. They're going to have to get their feet under them. The thing that I'd really be interested to know is how much of the relevant information is going to be passed from the hands of the present leadership into the hands of those that are coming in, and to make sure that there is a seamless transition. I mean, famously, when George W. Bush's administration took over from the Clinton administration, there was not a lot of good discussion between the outgoing and incoming leaders. And as a result, it appears that, that the Bush administration missed a lot of signs and the kind of intelligence that would have led to perhaps even stopping an attack like 9/11. So it's going to be important, despite the partisan rancor, despite the distrust between the two parties, between the two men, between the two administrations. There's going to have to be a sharing of that information. That's where the bureaucracy is going to be important, but also leaders that can transcend partisanship.
And this part of the interview is a very important point, crucial for the moment we are living in. What will the Trump administration do to deal with this new reality of terrorist attacks? Will Trump be able to unite the necessary forces to protect the country? Or will political polarization continue to be an obstacle? This is the answer that could define security in the United States. This is the answer that could define the future of security in the United States. As you can see, the world is more dangerous than ever. And the decisions made by the Trump administration could define the global future. And what do you think can be done? Leave your comments here. Don't forget to share your opinion. Both you and your opinion are very important to me. Thank you all so much. Just don't forget to leave your like. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Until our next meeting,